Welcome back to my Linux for Beginners series. In the first episode, we looked at creating a Linux virtual machine within Windows using VirtualBox, as well as performing some crucial updates to our Ubuntu system. If you missed that episode, that link to the video should pop up just here, and you can go and visit it to catch up. In this edition, we're going to run through some key commands while navigating our Ubuntu system. We're also going to play around with some file operations and also understand how permissions work. Let's get straight into it. Before we jump onto the command line, let's take a look at a visual representation of the Linux file system and how that works. The top level directory, denoted by the \, is the top level directory of Linux. It's the root file system and contains all of the files required to boot the operating system before other file systems are mounted, as well as the files required to boot other file systems. After boot, all of the other file systems are mounted at standard mount points as subdirectories of the root. The bin directory contains essential command binaries. The boot directory consists of the static bootloader, kernel executable, and files required to boot the Linux OS. The dev directory contains device files to facilitate access to every hardware device attached to the system. The etc directory contains local system configuration files. Configuration files for installed applications may be saved here as well. The library directory contains shared library files that are required for system boot. The media directory contains external removable media devices such as USB drives. They are mounted here. The mount directory is a temporary mount point for regular file systems. The opt directory is for optional files such as third-party tools. You can save those here. Each user on the system has a subdirectory here for storage called their home directory. The var directory contains variable data files such as log files, email inboxes, web application related files, cron files, and more. The user directory contains executables, libraries, and manual files. The operating system and many programs use the temp directory to store temporary files. This directory is generally cleared upon system boot and may be deleted at other times without any warning. The sys directory contains executables used for system administration. The proc directory contains process information. The root directory is the home directory for the root user. And the run directory is used to contain runtime information. Okay, we're back in our Ubuntu virtual system, and we're going to run through a few key commands. So the first thing we'll do is we'll open up our terminal. For this example, let's make it nice full screen so you can see exactly what's happening. Whenever you open a terminal in Linux, it will default to your home directory. Well, how do we know what directory we're actually in? We can simply type the command pwd, which stands for print working directory, and press enter, and that's going to tell us exactly where we're located on the command line. As you can see, we're located in our home directory under Allan. The next command we're going to learn is how to list what is in the directory that we're currently navigating. So using the simple command ls, which stands for list, and pressing enter, we can see the various folders that are in our home directory. We've got our desktop, documents, download music, pictures, and others. We may want to change directory and go into our documents, for example. Well, how do we do that? We use the command cd, which stands for change directory, and we simply type in documents and press enter. You'll see now that your command line will say the user, and it'll also have here in blue, or whatever color your command line is, the location that you're currently in. If we wanted to confirm that location, we can type print working directory, or pwd again, and we'll see that we are now in home, Allan, and documents. We can list what's in our document folder by using the ls command again, and you'll see we get no results. That's because there's nothing in there. So we've cleared our screen and we're back in our documents folder. What if we wanted to go back a directory? Well, we can just type in cd space ... and that'll bring us back to our home directory, which we can see by running pwd. So we can go cd documents, and if we want to go back, type cd ... There's another way to get back to your home directory that's quite simple in Linux. Let's go into our documents folder, and if we want to go back to our home folder at any time, no matter what directory we're in, we can type cd space and this little infinity symbol. And that brings us back to our home directory. Let's create a simple file in our documents directory. Maybe we want to create a text document. Let's go into CD documents. And we're just going to create a file, but not open it. Just create the file itself. So we use the command touch, and we'll call it notes.txt. Now, if we run the ls command, you'll see that our notes.txt is there, and it's an empty file. We can now run the ls-la command, which will show more information about the contents of our directory. So we can now see the notes.txt, as well as the file size here, which is 0 as it's empty. And you'll also see some gibberish here on the left-hand side. This is relating to the file permissions, which we'll get into shortly. So let's open up our notes.txt file with a text editor and put in some contents. One of the most common text editors in Linux is the Vim text editor, and that's kind of the equivalent of Windows Notepad. So we'll type vim notes.txt. Now see, we get an error. We don't have Vim installed, but Linux is nice enough to tell us exactly what we need to do to install the Vim text editor. We use sudo apt install vim. And we type in our password, we say yes to continue, and just like that, we are downloading and have downloaded the Vim text editor. The Vim editor has a little bit of a learning curve in terms of how to use it interactively. So for this example, we'll use another common text editor called Nano. So we'll type nano notes.txt, and Nano comes default with Ubuntu, so we don't have to download anything there. We can now type in some contents of our text file. Let's type in hello world, and you'll see down the bottom here some commands. These are the hotkey commands in order to make changes to our file. So we're going to exit the editor by using the X here. The little triangle up symbol represents control on your keyboard. So we'll type Control X. It then asks us, would we like to save the modified buffer? We'll select Y for yes, and it's asking us for the file name. We'll just press enter and leave it as notes.txt. Now we can list again, and we'll see that notes.txt is there. If we do an ls-la command, we'll see that the notes.txt has some size, so the contents are written there. Let's clear the screen to make this more readable. And say we wanted to read the contents of that file. Well, instead of what you would do in Windows, where is opening up the files folder, going to documents, going to notes, double clicking it and having a look, that's one way you can do it. But in Linux, we like to use the command line. So we can simply type in this command, cat, which stands for concatenate, notes.txt, and that's going to print the output of that file in our command line. Let's create a directory inside of our documents directory. To do that, we'll use the command mkdir, or make directory, and we'll give the directory a name of new folder. If we run our ls command, you'll see that we have new folder and notes.txt. Well, we can jump into our new folder by using change directory, new folder. And if we wanted to go back to our home directory, we can do cd space and our little symbol. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to copy our notes.txt file into the new folder. Well, how do we do that? Well, we're in our home directory right now, so what we can do is either change a directory into the documents folder, or we can just do it all with one line. We can write cp for copy, we can write documents / notes.txt, and where do we want to copy it? We want to copy it into documents, new folder, notes, we'll call it notes1.txt, and press enter. Now, if we go into our documents, we list, we can see new folder and notes.txt, change into new folder, and list. We've now got notes1.txt. We can type cat notes1.txt and read the output of hello world. Next, let's learn how to delete that file. We can run an ls just to see where we are. We can see we've got notes.txt. To remove that file, we simply type rm, remove, notes1.txt. Gone. If we run ls again, it's empty, gone, disappeared, just like that. What if we wanted to remove the folder itself? Well, we can go back a directory into documents, you can see we've got new folder. We'll just simply write rm new folder. And we see here that we cannot remove new folder because it's a directory. It's not a file. So to remove a directory, we would type rm-r, which stands for recursive, new folder. And what that's going to do is it's going to remove the folder and everything else within it. Let's clear the screen and we'll do a few more examples. Now what we're going to do is create a few more text files in a separate folder, and we're going to show you how to remove all of those files in there when you're actually inside that folder. Now I know that sounds confusing, but let me show you. So we're going to create a new folder called new folder. We're going to go in here and go into the new folder. We can pwd and see that we're in the right spot. We're going to make a file called notes1.txt, and we'll make notes2.txt, and we'll make notes3.txt. Now, if we list, we can see our 3 files there. Now, if we're inside the folder in our working directory, as illustrated here, we're inside the new folder, we can remove files one by typing rm notes1.txt, notes2.txt, notes3.txt, or we can use this command here, rm star. That's basically saying remove everything in the folder where I am. And we can list, and you'll see that it's now empty. Let's clear our screen and run through how to move a file from one place to another. So we're going to create another document called test.txt, and you'll see that that's located. We want to move that test.txt back one folder. Well, we can use the mv command, which stands for move. We can move test.txt, and we want to move it back. Now, you'll see it's gone from the folder, but when we go back one, we can see that the test.txt is there. In Linux, the move command can also be used to rename a file. So we can go move test.txt into the same spot, and we can call it testnew.txt. And we'll see that test has gone and test new now remains. So let's summarize what we've learned so far in terms of our Linux commands. We've learned how to print working directory using pwd. We've learned how to list files and folders using the ls command. We've also learned how to change directory using cd. We've learned how to list all information of a folder and file using ls-la. We've learned how to create a file using touch. We've learned how to open a file and save it in a text editor using vim or nano. We've also learned how to read the contents of a file in our terminal using the cat command. We've learned how to create a directory using mkdir. We've learned how to remove files and directories using rm, rm-star, and rm-r for recursive. We've also learned how to copy files using cp and move files using mv. So let's take a look through file permissions and how they work in Linux, and of course we'll use a visual representation for this. As we can see here, there are 3 types of permissions. They are read, represented by an R, which allows users to open and read file contents, write, which is represented by the W, allowing a user to edit, delete, or rename a particular file, and execute, represented by the letter X, which allows the user to execute a file as a script or program. You'll notice in Linux file systems, when you perform a list all command in a folder, there will be 3 sets of this RWX representation, as illustrated here in the black, as well as a letter or dash before this. If the first value here is a D, then the file is a directory. If it has a dash, then it just means that it's a normal file. The first set of RWX represents the permissions of the user or the owner of the file, essentially the user who created the file. The second set of RWX represents the permissions for the group, and the final sequence of RWX represents the permissions for everyone else, or other. In terms of amending these permissions, it's really handy to know the octal notations of these permissions. As a number, read is represented by the number 4, write is represented by the number 2, and execute is represented by the number 1. In this example, the user or file owner has full read, write, execute permissions, which could be represented as a 7, 4 plus 2 plus 1. The group has read-write permissions represented as a 6, 4 plus 2 equaling 6, read plus write, and the other just has read permissions represented as 4, or is read-only. If you wanted to set this same permission example on a real file, you could simply type in the command chmod or chmod 764. If you wanted to set full permissions for the user, group, and other, you could do that by typing chmod 777. Let's do it on our test files that we made earlier. Okay, so we're back on our terminal and we're going to change some permissions on some of these files. We're in the documents folder. If we run ls-la, we'll be able to see the permissions on the notes, for example. You'll see here that the dash representing that's just a regular file, not a directory. Read-write permissions are for myself, who created the file. Read-write permissions are also for the group. The group is also named Allan, and other have read permissions. And this is usually the default permissions whenever a file is created. We're going to make a modification to give the file permissions the same as the visual example we used earlier. So you can run chmod 764 and we'll put notes.txt. And now when we do list all, we'll see that notes.txt has some changed permissions. It has read, write, execute, read, write, and read. If we wanted to open up all the permissions on this, give everything full permission, we would run chmod 777 on notes.txt. Running the ls command again will show that change in permissions. And that's all for this episode. In the next episode, we'll take a look at package managers, we'll take a look at repositories, and installing third-party software on our Linux machine. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.